Hello, and welcome to this first lesson on the principles of Bhagavad Gita. Here we're going to talk about the main ideas or principles that come out of the Gita and the stories around it, with some simple ideas and stories, really. But let's start with the Gayatri Mantra, which is one of the oldest mantras in Hinduism, also known as Bij Mantra, which means seed. It's one of the key mantras, which is really asking God to give us knowledge. It's invoking the earth and the skies and meditating on the sun, asking God to eliminate the darkness of ignorance and illuminate us and enlighten us with knowledge. So let's chant together. Om Bhurбhuhasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. The Bhagavad Gita was given within the Mahabharata during the war of Kurukshetra by Krishna to Arjuna. And the backstory for the Mahabharata is quite important to understanding what's happening in the Bhagavad Gita itself. Okay? Now, the Mahabharata is a story about the conflict between two sets of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Pandavas are five brothers who are somebody with very good qualities, most qualities that we will want ourselves to have. Okay? Whereas Kauravas are 100 brothers, they're very, very strong and are driven mainly by desire. They want to live life to the fullest and do everything that they can. They care about themselves first and the people later. So these two sets of brothers both have right to the kingdom of Hastinapur, and they both could be the rightful heirs of the kingdom itself. So at one point, the kingdom gets divided into two halves. Pandavas get one half, and the Kauravas get the other half. The eldest brother of the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, becomes the king of one half, and Duryodhana, the eldest of the Kauravas, becomes the king of the other half. But the jealousy remains within the Kaurava clan of what they see their cousins having. Okay? And because of this jealousy, Kauravas plot a not so fair game, and as a result of that game, Pandavas end up in exile in the forest for a period of 12 years, followed by another year where they have to be in exile but incognito. The Pandavas finish all this exile and come back claiming their half of the kingdom, but Duryodhana says that they can't have it because it's his now. Right? But Pandavas can't give up that easily. The people of the kingdom are not very happy. You can imagine how the life of people that they're ruling would be if the kings only care about themselves and their own pleasure rather than the welfare of the people that they're governing. Right? So Pandavas should really be trying to get at least their half of the kingdom and make the place a better place for everybody living in that kingdom. But they won't really go into a war situation right at the start. So very commonly, if somebody says something to us, we would know, I'm going to fight for this, I will get this. But that's not what Hinduism recommends. That's not what Krishna recommends. Pandavas and all the elders around the Kauravas to appoint Sri Krishna as the Shanti Dutta. Shanti is peace, Duta is messenger. So he's the peace messenger between the two sets of cousins. And he tries to broker peace first between these two cousins to see if they can resolve this amicably rather than having to go into a full-blown war. So the way that Krishna recommended that somebody deals with any conflict is with a four-step technique known as Sama, Dana, Veda, Danda. It's recommended that we go through this methodical process to deal with any conflict, big or small, in life. Now, very often, somebody provokes one person and the other just goes for what we know in game theory as tit for tat. You did this, I'll do that. But at the end, when every conflict is dealt that way, we're all set to lose. So, what is recommended is, as a first initial step, we go for Sama, which is talking it out using logic. Okay, so we try to use kind words and explain why we want something to be done our way or why this is important. And also listen to understand, not listen to respond, but really listen to understand so that we can understand why the other person is doing things their way. And this understanding from both sides can very often resolve conflicts which might seem really insurmountable just by listening to understand and explaining in a way that the other person understands. A majority of the conflicts can be solved fairly quickly. Okay. The next step is dana. If just understanding doesn't kind of help, then dana, which is giving or charity, that means as a word, can be used to broker peace. Okay, so you're giving some and you can take some, and that give and take would help both parties and make peace. Sometimes it would feel that doing this dana, you're losing out, right? Why should I give when they're the ones who provoked me? But if you look at the cost of going into these two green boxes here, the Vedandanda, or going into any sort of conflict, it's really not worth it. Letting go or giving in for something minor, you will benefit in the long run because you give some and then later on there will be another instant where they will be kinder back to you. So this is another piece of that peaceful negotiation. Samadhana is used in a lot of Indian languages as peaceful resolution of something, and that's supposed to be always the first way of dealing with any issues. Next step we move to is Veda. Now, Veda is really using smart strategies of creating a difference, making sure that the situation can be diffused or weakened so that you don't have to take more drastic steps. And then the final step, which we should really avoid where possible, but when needed, we shouldn't be scared to use it. And this then is discipline, setting rules and making sure that the right thing is done, can be done through Danda. So in case of Mahabharata, in the Sama phase, Krishna goes and talks to both the Pandavas, Kauravas, and the people around these clans to try and see how he can make them better understand why they should go in peace and not go and escalate this conflict any further. This doesn't really get too far. We'll talk about what Duryodhana and Arjuna said during this Sama phase later on. But once that failed, the next step that Krishna went to is Dana. He said Pandavas are happy to accept 5 villages. 5 villages are minor compared to half the kingdom. Okay? but they need somewhere to live. So let them have 5 villages. They will happily live in these 5 villages, and you can have the rest of the kingdom. They're happy to give you the rest. So that is the dana, where they're happy to give up something to keep peace. Okay. And Duryodhana, being the arrogant person he was, said, there is no way I'm going to give them anything. They can't even have as much land as would stand on a pinhead. So that offer for dana was also rejected by Duryodhana. And then Krishna moved on to the Beda phase. Beda is using smart strategies to try and avoid this getting any further. So Krishna went to the rest of the Kauravas and said, you've got this very arrogant brother who wants to destroy the Pandavas for no reason. And just by standing behind him, you might actually destroy your entire clan. You know how powerful Arjuna is. He went to the heavens to get the weapons needed, which could kill all of the Kauravas and any big army that there is. Bhima is so powerful and is really angry after these 13 years in exile that just his wrath, his anger could really destroy half of the Kauravas. So think carefully. Do you really, really want to go into this war? So he tried to create division within the Kaurava clan to stop this war. But although people didn't like what Duryodhana was doing, Duryodhana still had their support, because at the end of the day, he had his bad ways, but they were still loyal to their king, their brother. And then the final step is Danda. Danda is when they went to war. Once the war is called, then Krishna only focused on trying to make sure that the war is fair and the right side wins. And now there is a difficult one. A lot of people think about the Mahabharata war as the war between good and evil people, but it's not really that simple. There were some very, very good people on the Kaurava side. Some of the teachers for the Pandavas, some of their own elders were there who were extremely good people. In fact, even Duryodhana wasn't that bad in itself. No individual is a good person or a bad person. They just do good things and bad things. We're all the same. That's really what Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata comes to. So this is an allegory. We have 5 qualities, key qualities, 5 senses with which we control everything else, and that could represent Pandavas. And there are hundreds and hundreds of desires that we want. We want something nice to eat, something nice to wear, something nice to go and watch. So all these desires can multiply. The numbers are much, much higher. And this war really happens in our heads half the time, where the good qualities or the good aspects of our personality are trying to keep these desires under check. So it's not necessarily just a war in the literal sense. It's something that represents a moral dilemma that often goes on within our heads. But in terms of dealing with conflicts, the Samadana Veda Danda is often a good way of trying to think about how you'll deal with any situation. It could be anything really. So what I would like you to do now is to work on some examples, do a discussion amongst yourself and see how you would use Samadana Veda Danda in your own life to get to the results that you ideally want, okay? To do the right thing. Let's take an example. You go to a shopping mall with your friends. There's 7 or 8 of you, and one decides that he's going to effectively shoplift something minor, but it's still not the right thing to do. Okay, how are you going to deal with this request through Samadana Veda Danda. Or use a different scenario. There's one friendship group where one person talks ill of another, and you know that if this carries on, that person's going to feel bad. There might even be a split in the group. How would you deal with that using this technique? Okay, so pause it here, think about what you can do in these situations, and come back and carry on. Hope you find the discussion to be useful. Now, the next question that we have is, why was Bhagavad Gita taught to Arjuna and not to Duryodhana? If you are in a classroom and you have a group of boys who do the right thing, or they try their best to always be good, but there's another group of boys who are bullies, who are horrible, and the teacher goes and tells the guys who are trying to behave well how to be good, what they should and shouldn't be doing, but just completely ignores the other group which really needs this teaching. How do you feel? We would be quite perplexed, isn't it? Why tell the good guys how to be even better? And the reason for why Krishna gave or taught the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna lies somewhere in this. Okay? In the Sama phase, Krishna goes to talk to both Duryodhana and Arjuna, trying to find a peaceful middle ground between the two groups. And Duryodhana's answer to Krishna's questions of logic was, I know what's right, but I can't do it. Okay? I know what's wrong, but I can't stop. It feels like there's something else controlling me from the inside. Okay? Whereas to the same question, Arjuna's question in return was, how do I stay calm and do the right thing? I want to follow dharma, but it's hard. Okay, so if you look at this, you can see some patterns that are emerging through what you might have been taught at school. Okay, Duryodhana's answer is very much from the closed mindset. Okay, he's saying, this is what I'm like. There's nothing I can do about it. This is me. Okay, whereas Arjuna is saying, this is me, but how do I change it? So I want to be there, but I'm not there yet. Okay, that power of yet that you might have learned with the growth and closed mindset is very, very important here. If you think this is me, there's nothing I can do about it, you can never change. Okay, you need to have an open mindset to make any difference, and giving any lectures, any knowledge to somebody who has closed mindset is a complete waste of time, because they're not going to even listen because they've decided what they're going to be. And if you really want to be a better person, you really want to learn, you want to progress, the only way to do it is with an open mindset. Yes, you can't do it, but you can't do it yet. It's not that you'll never be able to do it. So Arjuna wants to follow dharma. He knows it's hard. It's no easier for him than it is for Duryodhana, but he wants to learn how to do it. He does realize that he just can't do it yet. And the thing that the Duryodhana talks about, that there's something else inside me that's controlling me, features quite heavily in the Bhagavad Gita, and trying to explain what those forces are that try to control us. So why do we do the things that we don't want to do? And that's because of our habits and our nature, otherwise known as Prakriti, that work in the background, and they're all within our subconscious mind. This is what we like to do, and this is what we don't like to do. That's something that's in us as a natural entity. We will talk about this at a later lesson and explore that in detail for a whole class later on. But what we need to understand is the actions happen fast without us ever thinking. So in the subconscious mind, you might have likes or dislikes. One person might really like chocolate cake, and the other person might not like it at all. Okay? So the person who likes chocolate cake, if they walk into the kitchen this nice piece of chocolate cake, that unconscious thought that they like chocolate cake converts into the action of starting to enjoy it without ever thinking about it. Okay, so the conscious thinking might never happen, but that unconscious thought of, oh, chocolate cake, would automatically go into starting to eat it. Okay, so that transition from conscious or rather unconscious to conscious is a very small moment. There's a tiny moment where we can intercept and choose how we act on. And that's really what the Bhagavad Gita wants you to develop. Having the knowledge of understanding and slowing this process of thinking what's in your unconscious mind, which might convert into actions, which might convert into this, and stopping it at the right moment and getting your conscious mind to think about it is where Bhagavad Gita will help you to develop further. Thank you, and we'll talk about some more concepts in the next class. See you later.